What's up, guys? Lucky Locks here, back with another video, and this is going to be for Dana White's Contender Series Week 7. And before we get into it, I'm just going to give another quick plug to my BetMMA.tips page. So just go to BetMMA.tips/luckylocks. I always put this in the description. You can see what I'm betting, how I'm doing, and just basically track my results there. Completely transparent and also completely free of charge at the moment, so feel free to head on over there and have a look. The first bout on the card is going to be a women's strawweight bout between Kathryn Paprocki and Maria Silva. Paprocki is a 3-1 prospect out of Colorado. She had a 3-0 amateur career beforehand, and I've really liked what I've seen out of her thus far. She's getting a short notice opportunity here on Dana White's Contender Series. She's a pretty smart fighter. I feel like she knows what she needs to do to win. I think that she needs to bring some grappling pressure, wear on her opponent, maintain control. She has defeated Isis Verbeek on Invicta, who's a skilled Dutch kickboxer who won her next 3 fights after losing to Paprocki. And Verbeek has a similar style to Silva, both strikers. Paprocki was also able to beat Tiani Vale, who was a good striker as well. More of a power striker than a technical wizard, but Paprocki does have some striking too. She has some pro Muay Thai and boxing experience. She was able to get a submission win in her last bout on LFA. She was supposed to fight Vanessa Demopoulos and then Hillary Rose on LFA. Both of them got canceled. And so, presumably she's been ready to go for the spot, but it is a little bit short notice. You have to factor that in. I look at her as, kind of an upper echelon LFA type fighter. I think that she's one of the better strawweights in the USA outside of the UFC. And looking at Maria Silva, she's an undefeated Brazilian prospect. Looks like a great striker, really good kickboxer. Footwork looks very slick, very bouncy on the canvas. She hits really hard and she can finish people off in that cage. And same thing we were saying about Tiani Vale. We're kind of saying about Silva, where she's a really good striker. She hits really hard and she has knockouts, but Paprocki was able to get it done against Vale. And I do believe that Silva is a much more formidable foe, but I don't think that Paprocki is a fighter that's just going to get waxed here. We haven't seen Silva since 2019, but that's been an issue for a lot of Brazilian regional fighters during the kind of the COVID era. It's just been hard to get fights down there. And I think that she's definitely still been training, definitely still in good shape. And I think that this is probably Silva's fight if it stays standing, but I am going to slightly lean towards Paprocki as the dog here. I like the grappling upside, I like her toughness, and I like the fact that she's been a little more active lately. I think that if she can get it down regularly, her chances of winning are significantly higher than the line suggests. But all in all, I'm not really interested in betting this one, so I probably will not have any action here. Next up, we have what is, in my opinion, the best matchup on the card between Duncan and Slava Borschev at 155 pounds. And this is just going to be a banger of a fight. And just to be transparent, before we start the breakdown, like I said last time we talked about Duncan, I am a big fan of his, so I probably am a little bit, inherently biased to him. But I just want to be upfront about that. Obviously, I'll try to be as unbiased as I possibly can in the breakdown. But yeah, let's get into it. So Duncan is an undefeated Scottish prospect, and he's being thrown a much more difficult matchup here than he was in the previous scheduled bout, which fell through. And that one actually fell through on the day of. His opponent pulled out after a pretty bad weight miss the day before. Duncan's 28 years old. He's a big lightweight at 5'11" with a 7-0 record. He has 6 knockouts and 1 submission in those 7 wins for a 100% finishing rate. He had a 8-1 amateur career before turning pro, and in 2019 he fought for Bellator for the first time. That was at Bellator 217 in Dublin. He was able to win the UFL 155-pound belt in Scotland and then go back to Bellator for 2 more fights. And the combined opponent record for Duncan is 37-18, so that's pretty strong competition for a guy that's coming on to the Dana White's Contender Series here. And Duncan has finished every single one of those fights. He was 3-0 on Bellator, 3 knockouts, and including his amateur results, he is currently riding a 14-fight win streak. So he entered free agency a little while ago, and now he's here on Dana White's Contender Series, obviously looking to get his chance at the UFC, and I'm really excited to see him in this fight. He's got great pressure and control in the cage. He is very poised, but he's also very dangerous, and when he smells blood in the water, he's going to go for it. Up against the cage, he has just lethal combinations, a really nice left hook, and he's pretty strong in the clinch. He's pretty big for the weight, but in this matchup against Slava, it's actually pretty similar, so I'm not sure how much of a pronounced advantage, if at all, he will have in those situations, whereas in his last fight, I thought that he would have a pretty big advantage there. Duncan also has some pretty stiff low kicks that I like, and looking at Slava Borschev, he is a 4-1 Russian training at Team Alpha Male, coming off 2 stoppage wins this year, both of them on Titan FC. One of them was against Kenley St. Louis, who, he's okay, he's not great. The one loss that he has is William Starks, who we talked about a while ago on LFA 114. And Starks is a pretty good fighter. I mean, he's one of those guys from the IMMAF amateur scene, so he's fought a lot of good guys on that scene. I mean, Ben Bennett, Lucas Clay and a couple other good guys. So William Starks is a good fighter. It was a split decision, so I'm willing to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. He was able to beat Ali Zabian in 2020, which is a win that has aged pretty well. Borschev is really not the typical fighter you'd expect if you just saw his name and picture. You see a bearded Russian guy and automatically think he's going to ragdoll guys for 15 minutes, but Slava actually prefers to stand, and he's pretty damn good at it too. He's a powerful and technical striker, and I do believe that this is a much harder matchup for Duncan than the original one, but I still am going to go with Chris Duncan to get this one done. I am admittedly biased, like I said, but I do like him to win. I think that it's going to be a banger of a fight. Two guys who are all about the action. I bet Chris Duncan when this line opened at minus 155, and I added to it at minus 134. There was a little bit of a line movement towards Slava, and I would play Chris Duncan probably up to about minus 170, minus 180 maybe, but once we're above that and into the minus 200-ish range, I probably wouldn't be interested in laying that chalk against a really solid opponent like Slava Borschev, but definitely, rooting for Chris Duncan to get this one done, both with my money and with my heart, so hopefully he gets it done. Next up on the card is another really exciting matchup actually at flyweight, and this is going to be between Jake Hadley and Mitch Raposo. So two guys that a lot of you are probably familiar with already. Jake Hadley is an undefeated 7-0 prospect from Birmingham, 7-2 amateur career, so combined record of 14-2. I think that he could look a little bigger here as a result of his height advantage, despite Raposo coming down from 135. Raposo could look a little bit thicker, though. It's tough to say, really, until you really see them standing next to each other at the face-off. And Hadley was the 125-pound champion in EFC and Cage Warriors. He's a well-rounded fighter with a 71% finish rate. Really impressive resume on paper. He's a southpaw. He has sharp hands, nice use of the low kick as well. He's shown us some wrestling, shown us a little bit of jiu-jitsu. I think that Raposo could have, maybe a little bit of an edge in those exchanges when they're in the more neutral positions. I think that both guys will be able to hold dominant positions when and if they get them. I just don't know if Raposo was the chops to hang with Hadley on the feet. The combined opponent record over the last 4 bouts for Hadley has been 35-9, so that's pretty strong competition. Overall, his combined opponent's record is 39-34, but that's pretty much just due to one of his first bouts being against a guy who was 0-24, so that really kind of brings it down a little bit. But lately, he has been fighting a lot of high-level competition, and certainly much higher than Mitch Raposo has been up against. Raposo, on the other hand, is another prospect that I like. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a really young, undefeated prospect from Massachusetts, 5-0 pro and 5-0 amateur for 10-0 combined. He's still 22 years old, so really young. He suffered a loss in the Ultimate Fighter against Ludwig Scholinian. That was an exhibition fight, of course, technically, so it doesn't really count on his record. But it definitely is an important thing to factor in here. I just don't know if Raposo was ready for the UFC yet. He's still 22. He still has a long way to go. He's still very good right now, don't get me wrong, but I just don't know if he's ready for that next step at the current time. He's a good mix of skills. He's competent pretty much everywhere. I really just don't have anything negative to say about him other than the fact that I don't think he's better than Jake Hadley right now. His combined opponent record is 13-26. And just at 22 years old still, I think he needs more time. So I'm going to go with Jake Hadley here. I feel pretty good about him in this spot. I tried to bet him at minus 185 at the line open, but it moved so quickly. It was minus 300 by the time I tried to place the bet. So I haven't touched it at this point. I think he could potentially be a parlay piece here, but currently I have no action on him for this card. So we move on to the heavyweight division for our next bout, and this is going to be a match between Lorenzo Hood and Martin Buday. And there could potentially be some fireworks here for sure. Lorenzo Hood has been in the game for over a decade now. He is 32 years old with a 12-4 record. And Lorenzo Hood was the first fighter that Curtis Blaydes fought as a pro. So he was, Curtis Blaydes' debut fight. Obviously, Lorenzo Hood was defeated in that one, but I don't really think we can hold that against him too much. But yeah, for the most part, he's fought really weak competition. His combined opponent record is 27-47. That's not counting all the random fights on the Montana regional scene back in 2009. I mean, probably be a little worse if we factored those in, but wasn't able to find records for those guys. But his last 3 opponents were 1-10, 2-8, 4-17, and the fight before that was against Tyler King, who not really a guy that I think all that highly of, and he lost that fight. That was on World Series of Fighting. So to be honest, I'm not really sure why Lorenzo Hood is here. If I'm being brutally honest, this is not a guy that I'd look at and say he could be in the UFC. He was supposed to fight Lucas Bresky earlier this year, but Hood withdrew from that one. And if I had to guess the reason that the UFC is interested, I'd say it's probably the 100% finish rate with 12 knockouts that he does possess. That is impressive. I don't really care who you're fighting. That's impressive. But at the same time, I mean, that alone is not going to be enough for me to pick him against Buday here. Buday is 29 years old from Slovakia, has an 87% finish rate. Looks to be very promising. 8-1 record. That one loss was to Juan Espino, who obviously is a UFC fighter now and a guy that people think pretty highly of in the heavyweight division. Buday has a lot of fights on Octagon, fought much better guys than Hood has fought, and Buday's combined opponent record is 45-33. So there's a big gap there, I would say, between the two in terms of competition that they've faced. Buday was supposed to be fighting undefeated Brazilian heavyweight Hugo Cunha, but Cunha withdrew, and now he has Lorenzo Hood. I feel like this is a much more favorable matchup for him. I think that Buday is more technical. I think that he's more well-rounded, and I just think that he has more ways to win. So yeah, I'm going to go with Buday here. I think that Hood's window to pick up a W here is pretty much limited to the first 3 minutes or so. I just think that Buday is the better fighter here, so that's going to be my pick. So the main event of this card is going to be a bantamweight bout, and we're going to actually see Tracy Cortez's brother, Junior Cortez, coming up against Christian Rodriguez. And this is definitely an interesting matchup right here with two pretty promising guys. Cortez is training at MMA Lab in Arizona. That's a nice camp. I believe he was at Fight Ready for this fight, though. So, he's there in Arizona getting his work in. He had a 4-1 amateur career and won a split decision over Clayton Carpenter as an amateur, who is currently at the MMA Lab as well, and he seems to be a pretty promising prospect, so that kind of jumped off the page to me a little bit. I think that's a pretty impressive win. Cortez currently has an 80% finish rate as a pro with a 5-1 record, but his combined opponent record is only 12-16. He lost his only LFA fight by split decision to Justin Hughes, who was 3-4 at the time, and he was able to win his last appearance on Combate. He's a pretty decent wrestler. I'm not really in love with anything else that he does. I just don't know if he really has the goods for the next level. If you're going to have a strength in MMA, though, I mean, it might as well be wrestling. Can bail you out of a lot of situations and can win you fights that you otherwise wouldn't have much business winning. I think that Cortez is pretty solid, and I think that he can keep it competitive, but Christian Rodriguez, 23-year-old Roufusport prospect, 5-2 amateur career, and was extremely young during those fights, only 23 years old now. He is a 5-0 pro with a 100% finish rate, showing a lot of really good improvements. He has a win on Bellator, 2 wins on LFA, and most recently knocked out Charalampos Grigoriou on CFFC in the 3rd round. And Grigoriou himself had a really nice finish actually on the last CFFC card, just as a little side note. So Rodriguez is able to carry that explosiveness into the later rounds. His combined opponent record is 13-12, so not great. I mean, similar competition level to Cortez, but I would give Rodriguez the slight edge there. I think that he has very good wrestling as well. And I feel like that kind of cancels out Cortez's biggest asset in this one. And I think that Rodriguez is better in the other areas and at least as good as Cortez in the wrestling. So I like Rodriguez to get it done here. I just think he's the better prospect. And to be honest, I'm not really sure if we'd be seeing Cortez here in this spot without the connection to Tracy. So that's going to be all my predictions for this Dana White's Contender Series card. Thank you guys very much for watching. Appreciate everyone that takes the time to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And catch you guys on the next one. Take care. Have a great day.